post that and kind of just give a brief summary right now. There's a lot going on in people's lives right now on multiple fronts, and I was starting to see similar veins of things running through, and that led me to Deuteronomy 29, and just like the curses listed there, and we're kind of moving through them. So I would encourage everybody to kind of go read through that, pray through it, and see where you stand. I can go ahead and throw like the full version of this in the group chat for people to read at their availability as well.
And I was also given a similar but separate word from the Lord, and it was, so we've had like spiders in our house like crazy, and like black widow spiders. And I went down one night, checked if the door was locked, and I usually don't do that. And there were two just like sitting there at the piano. And I was like, okay. And Wellington had to go to work at 2 in the morning. I was like, well, I'm not leaving those there. So Wellington asked to kill them. And so we killed the spiders. I'm like, okay, this is probably, there's probably more to it than there's spiders in the house, because we've been here a year and that was never a problem. And the Lord told me to read Jeremiah 4:12, which talks about a wind coming through for judgment. And before that it says that wind can be for cleansing. But this isn't a cleansing wind, it is a wind of judgment that brings judgment. And I think that the Lord was telling me that there's deception going on in our community, and people aren't acting the way we think they are, maybe, or maybe not everybody is living up to what God is calling them to do, and they're pretending they are, maybe, and that judgment is going to befall those individuals. And we all have a role to play in praying for those individuals, and praying and weeding out where in us that deception lies, and where we aren't following God's calling, and where we're even deceiving ourselves. So and I think he keeps saying that, just keep praying for these individuals, keep praying over your own family and these families, because you don't know where this deception is, but I do, and I'm bringing judgment. And it's not, it is to judge, not to help them clean up, because you've had time to clean up.
I think that big one is deceiving ourselves, that we think we're doing what we're supposed to be doing.
But one thing is that oftentimes if you have a lot of spiders, that's a sign that there's a much deeper problem, like that you have problems with bugs and stuff. So I wonder if there's like any symbolism there of like, because like usually that's not like the root cause is something much deeper. It's not just the spiders wander in.
Well, we don't have any other bugs in the house at all, and everything's kept clean. Right. There was a piano that came in that had like a lot of stuff, but we've cleaned it, and we have prayed about it, and the Lord said like this is a means that he was using to make us reflect, I think.
To pay attention.
Yeah, to pay attention. Because like they're black widows, and like that can't kill me, but it can kill a baby. And like the Lord also said that we'd be safe, but these were a tool. So, but thank you, Sean. And I'll look out for bugs.
See, I've been kind of going through a rough patch myself. Like, it's a mental thing for me. And I had found bugs and stuff, like weird stuff like that doesn't pop up around the house, but in my room specifically on my pillowcases and stuff. And I had to like clean out and wash my clothes and stuff, but I haven't been actively as praying and stuff, and I've been putting other things before the Lord. That was very because that kind of spoke to me, because I've been struggling mentally, but I'm trying to like not go back to like, to who I was then, because I feel like the enemy tries to distract me by bringing around certain people like, oh, you used to do this or you used to do that, and like instead of going forward and moving forward into a new season, I feel like I'm being kind of dragged back to like that season of darkness, so I don't know, I wanted to come to do that, because I feel like I need to be around people that actually really support and stuff and speak life over you,
Yeah.
I don't know. Sorry, just wanted to say that. Sorry.
Well, I'll be praying for you.
I'd like to hit on just one thing that you mentioned there, that kind of revisiting your old self, having those things show up.
Mm-hmm.
In that moment, you have a choice of moving into a position of shame, which is what is the natural move, is to kind of put there and then, oh, I feel, and then you start emotionally kind of packing all this stuff around. Or you can boldly acknowledge and say, yeah, that's right, but that was the old man. The old man's been put down. So being able to make that decision in real time and not let it come in order to challenge your identity. And the trouble is we have a hard time letting go of the old man. You know, when you become a new creation, you're a new creation, not a hybrid version of the old one and the new one. You're a new one in full. So there's no shame being on the other side of being the new person, of saying, yeah, that old one needed to die. You were exactly right. That old one needed to die a severe, gruesome death because it was so packed full of sin and deception and evil. It needed to go away. So yeah, you're exactly right. Now the power is gone. There is no power over you because there's no place for shame to dwell.
So in choosing life instead.
Yep. And that's hard to do because death is incredibly attractive. It is so satisfying. It feels a lot of those, it helps us create a measuring system of judgment. Because, woo!
She says, preach it.
That's what I'm talking about. We understand death. We understand pain. We understand shame. We don't like it, but it's comfortable. We know how to operate within the boundaries of those things. We don't really have any exposure to what does it mean to live free? What does it mean to have life?
Right.
We don't really have an example of that we've probably witnessed. It's not probably anything we've lived to any high level. We might have seen expressions of it, but it's hard to move into something we don't understand, into something that we don't know what to do with, because at that point you have to move into actually having faith, and using that to develop trust is the transition. But it's easy to gravitate back into the old habits. It's easy to gravitate into the old addictions, it's just easy because we know how to operate in that world.
It's familiar. Like, I don't know how to...
Very familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the exact terminology. It's called familiar spirit. It's easy. Stinks at an incredibly high level. We hate it to the core of our being, but we love it oh so much. Yeah.
It just kind of goes back to, all my life, my brother and my sister and I were always fighting for the underdog, or fighting for justice and hate the unjust. And, it took me a long time during this whole thing to get to where I could worship today. I mean, it took a long time before I could even open my mouth, because I want justice. And then when you find out that they're not gonna do anything because, oh no, it's just a petty misdemeanor, we don't care, then you want more than justice. I want him brought up on charges. I want this done. And then it goes in my head, okay, what am I gonna do? How can I go about it? How can I change laws? How can I do this? And it's like, it frustrates. Because when you are the victim, I don't care if it's just a slap. You're still a victim. But justice says, well, I don't care. Let's let them off. So that's why it took me so long today to get into that. Because I want justice. I shouldn't have to. See, there's those words. I shouldn't have to put up with this. No one should have to go through that. We know it's life, but it's also wrong.
So here's the danger in the midst of this. We can't call forth justice unless we're prepared to receive
Right.
justice.
Mm.
We are
I understand
not.
that.
We are nowhere close to wanting to be brought up on the charges of our own guilt. We want mercy.
Right.
We want people to extend grace to us in the midst of our mistakes. With other people, we want our pound of flesh. So this is the dangerous little feedback loop you get put into of what's properly called the victim spirit.
Right.
I am the innocent lamb that has been sent to the slaughter. When you put it in that context, immediately you know 100% you are not
Yeah.
the lamb. There's only one.
And that's why it took so long, because I had to get to the spot where I could say, what was it exactly that I said? He needs salvation. But how do I, that wasn't it, but anyway, how do I conduct myself?
Right.
Because I don't know how to explain it, but okay, I wasn't sure, maybe you had something, but it's, you know, the jobs that we have is, you know, hard. His is really hard. I couldn't do it because I would be angry all the time. I just couldn't do it.
True story.
And you know, the anger is gone down. It wasn't really anger, it was frustration. And that's hard enough to deal with. If I let it go to anger, then I'm really gonna be in trouble. Yeah, I had to get to where I could say, okay, I forgive him, but I can get to that far, and that but is what gets me.
But the ultimate justice is not that he dies, but that he lives.
Exactly. He needs saving. He's so mentally into the drinking and everything else and the anger, because like you said, that the victim mentality, because that's part of his issue as well. Everything's been done to me, so I'm gonna do it to everybody else. And all of them just about are that way that hang out there.
Mm.
So it just, you know, it's a rough environment sometimes.
Yeah.
Anyway, so, sorry it took me so long to get into everything, but, yeah.
And what that ultimately translates to is you guys are in positions that allow you to understand the kingdom far easier and far quicker than the rest of us.
Anyway,
Exactly this. You know, for me, it'd be like, oh, well, I can't believe an email went out, not even to me, just to a mass group of people that made some little something, and then I'm like, well, they need to be, you know, so I'm sitting in a perch in a little bubble of my judgment. You're actually standing face to face with exactly that.
but I'm still judging, 'cause
But
but I know what you were saying.
You can get there a whole lot faster.
Yeah,
you
I
can
see
get
what
there a
you're
lot
saying.
faster.
Yeah,
Because you're experiencing the 100% dead serious reactionary. I have to figure out how to properly respond.
Right.
I have to figure out how to manage this in the spirit. I need to understand how to really be like Jesus. I need to know how. Because it's the only way I'm actually physically going to live.
Right.
For me, I can keep it abstract and theoretical. I can keep everything out here and just kind of, oh, well.
There's times where we wish we could.
Okay, I don't really like that person who has no idea I even exist, mind you. I don't care for that. Well, let me see if I can practice forgiveness.
You can write all those nasty emails and just delete them. Good.
I didn't send them, but I did send them.
Yeah.
That's where he's talking about you accidentally did.
There you go.
So, pro tip, you never put an address in the send to field. Leave that blank.
Write it all
Rookie
out.
move is to put their address in there and then type it.
Because you'll send it out of habit. It wasn't an angry email for me. It was supposed to be a scheduled one. But I sent it at the wrong time. A lot of people got angry.
Well,
My bad.
I'm thinking about pepper spray again. I'm thinking about taser again. Others have told me you should be packing again. I don't want to have to do that. There's some situations I can diffuse. I did the other day. He was drunker than anything, and this guy was wanting more food, more water, more this, more that, and I went out there and I said, you were just given your food, you were given a good cold bottle of water. I said, but you're drunk. And I says, what you really need is to go sleep it off. And he just looked at me. He said, well, I do? I said, yes, you need to go sleep it off. And I had Carol or somebody behind me, and cause she was the one who told me that, he was having a problem, and he just looked at me and goes, okay, I'll go sleep it off. And he turned and walked away. But not every situation is like that. And I don't know who's outside underneath those trees when I go outside to leave. I'm there by myself. Everybody else is closed and gone next door, and sometimes I just, I watch and have to pay attention more often than other times. And so there's times where it is kind of intimidating, but I know that I'm protected. I mean, that could have been me that was hit instead of my car. I don't know. I guess I just need to, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that I think is totally fine. It's being able to out-process all this data and get to that place of, okay, I've actually heard myself say this out loud, and yes, it is ridiculous, and I understand the ways of the kingdom, and I know how I need to change whatever, but when you hold that stuff in and you're like, well, I'm supposed to be a good Christian, I'm not allowed to even have these thoughts, and then the self-condemnation
The
folds
shame.
and the shame comes in. Exactly, kind of going back.
How do you deal with that? Like what process do you take to not let yourself feel like you have to be? Because I don't know. I feel like I always have to be living up to these expectations or this or that, and I feel like if I don't meet them, then it's like, well, you're not doing your job or you're not good enough, And it's like it's hard to sometimes process that for me because I hear it, but I don't think I'm understanding that or what that looks like. Because you.
I think it comes down to how you define your identity. Where is your identity lowered if you can't uphold those standards in God's eyes? Well, no, because He has already chosen you and says that you are worthy, sent His Son to die on your behalf. And so I think being able to process those things and then knowing like, okay, I need to repent and start actually making changes, those steps, it helps towards the process of not doing that anymore. It's not necessarily a switch you flip. And so I think for myself, the way that I kind of handle those things is I'll either journal or talk with people and try not to make like identity statements about other people or situations or whatever, and try to pray the opposite. Doesn't always help. Sometimes you just bend when you say things and you're like, probably shouldn't have said that. But I think just keeping that repentant spirit and being actually like trying to continue into the right direction, knowing that sometimes you fall to the wayside left or right, but just continuing the path of repenting when you have messed up, not allowing the shame and condemnation to keep you there or to make you turn back, but just to continue to push on
That's kind
whenever
of,
that happens.
that's hard for me to do.
So I guess my question is, whose standard are you trying to meet?
Also a fair question.
My parents.
Your parents?
You'll never meet those expectations, I can tell you now.
This is
Or
being
standards, I
recorded.
mean. Huh?
This is being recorded. There's only one standard you should concern yourself with, and that's Abba's standard. And that one's a piece of cake. He demands that you walk perfectly. That's simple. You know what the standard is. You're called to be perfect, called to be a priest. That's easy. When you move into the standard of man, it's a sliding scale. Changes with every human being you talk to. Like, well, I'm going to meet the standard of my boss. I'm going to meet the standard of my cousin. I'm going to meet the standard of the mailman. Whatever. Everybody does what's right in their own eyes. Everybody has their level that they deem this. Somebody who lives here is good. Somebody who's here is bad. We like to sort good and bad in our own mind with a nice line, and we categorize people. If they do these types of things, we'll put them in this group. If they do these types of things, well, now we're going to put them down in this group. And so we sit in a place of judgment in creating a standard just in general. So as a parent, looking to your kids and saying, we are going to have standards in this house. This is, all of a sudden, we have created a rule box that we don't even realize we've created. We've created a structure that has the potential to breed a very high level of rebellion, because like we were even talking about this last night, because this is my line does not move, because I am the God of you. Not the steward, not the parent who is here to try and equip you to be a follower of the Messiah and to walk in the shadow of the Almighty. It's I am your God and you will do what I say. That's dangerous, but that's how it's done. That's called parenting. Instagram's chock full of it, from what I understand, and it changes by the
Every
week.
day.
Yeah, like, oh well, here's the new, latest and greatest research on how to bring up kids that are different. You know,
Cut out your parents. They don't know anything.
True.
So the kind of exactly like Dry is pointing out, when you're allowing your identity to get roped into other people's ideas of who you are and who you're supposed to be, you will always be in a place of questioning and weird tension. You'll never be resolved. You'll always have that agitation because you don't know when is the line going to move. And then now I go to work somewhere, what's their line look like? You're going to always be looking for the line. I need to make sure I'm staying in the good section of their line. And then you're just going to be lost all the days of your life trying to figure out how to make man happy. That's a futile task. People are fickle. Their happiness sways by hormones. Their happiness sways by circumstance. Money, power, everything just sways and moves, and it's like the tops of the trees in a nice big storm. Is it going to go over? It depends. The root's probably deep enough. It'll just maybe snap in half. You know, it won't pull it back. I mean, it's just, yeah. people are.
Because I grew up in Nevada, and the culture there, the mindset there is very different from here. And when I'm here, it's kind of like, I feel like I can be, like, I don't have to live to, like, I don't have to dress this way, I don't have to be this way, I can just be kind of myself. But it's like, when I go back, I feel like I always have to, like, or if I talk to my parents, it's so different, I have to, like, kind of, like, conceal or camouflage to, like, fit in. And I feel like I've been not really, like, I'm kind of like, I feel like when I go back, I get kind of lost, and then when I come back, I get like, oh, I get back on the path. But then it's like when I go back, it's kind of like I'm just, I feel kind of like I'm not doing the right things, you know? Like, I don't know. I feel conflicted.
So you're experiencing something that is pretty common to absolutely everybody. Anytime you go back into the environment of which you were brought up, you move back into who you were in that space. So as an example, we would go back and visit family, and if we were at my parents' house, then I would instantly roll back into full, like, my dad would make all the decisions, this is what we're gonna do, this is everything, and so I didn't have to make any decisions. Because all the decisions were made for me. Or not even necessarily like on behalf of, but to me. This is the rule, this is the standard. So I just naturally gravitate into, I don't make a decision. Whatever, we'll do whatever. When we go to her parents' house, she transitions into being bossy, telling everybody what to do.
No, I make all the decisions.
Because she makes all the decisions. So it tells everybody what to do. So when we would go to her family's house, it would grate me because I'm like, not don't tell me what to do, but just, and then she would get frustrated when we go to my parents because it's like, make a decision already.
Yeah.
All we're asking is, what do you want to eat? Whatever. But it wasn't until we were pretty far on in our marriage when this finally became apparent to us that this is what was happening. Because we would just get annoyed with one another when we'd go back and visit, not really knowing why. It was just there. But then once we realized, I'm going back into my parents' home, I naturally move back into my role in that home. When go back to her parents' house, she moves back into her role in that home.
Our kids do the same thing, married kids, when they come home with their own children, go back into their roles.
Yeah. So you're not broken as a result. It's just learning how to stay on guard and not get sucked into the things you shouldn't.
Because they believe in they're open to different things, and I've experienced and I've partook in different things before I came here. And now that I'm on this certain path, it's kind of like going back, they're kind of like very, it's not that they don't respect, they don't respect, like they're just kind of like, who cares, just, God will forgive you anyway, or, like, and I feel like my parents, I don't know if that's like, because it says to, honor your parents and stuff, but in a lot of ways I'm just like, how can I do that if you're not really leading me in the way that I should go, in a lot of ways. And it's like this weird thing that I'm like going through when I talk with them, like, or with them.
How old are you?
18.
Oh, you're just branding. You're gonna be fine.
I'll be fine.
You're gonna be fine.
And the thing is you can honor them and not necessarily agree, but still love and respect them. And I mean, if they're leading you to do something directly against what Torah says, respectfully not do it, but all the other stuff doesn't really matter.
Okay.
I mean, if they're trying to prostitute you on the side of the road, okay, that's bad.
I'm talking like worshiping different gods. Or
Yeah, and you just don't. You don't, I mean, are they putting the blood that was sacrificed to idols in front of you, telling you to drink it and eat the meat?
Not kind of like that, but like there's different ways. Like like somebody, I don't know if you're with Mexican, like that kind of, with the saints and all that.
Yeah,
Like,
you don't have to do anything with them. So,
Like Daniel.
yeah, and just be like, okay,
Yeah, there's a
love you,
respectful way
respect
to do
you,
that.
yeah.
Like for myself, when I really first started following Torah, I was the guy who cooked the bacon for the family for a really long time. And when I was like, well, I don't do that, I don't eat this anymore. I still cook it for my family. I'm like, okay, doesn't bother me.
I'm not going to hell.
Alrighty now. Basically, yeah. Because I had a lot of judgments then, so still have a lot of judgments now to deal with. But I think it comes down to figuring out how to respectfully be like, well, I don't really do this anymore. So I'll still, honor the relationship and still value keeping a relationship with people, but not necessarily ascribing the same respect or authority to whatever they're doing that you used to. I don't celebrate Christmas. Does that mean I don't go to my aunt's Christmas party every year? Well, no, because she beat me up. So she's like, come spend time with your niece, or technically second cousin, or I don't know.
Same difference.
Yeah, but the punchline is it's on you. It's not on them to bend to you. Because you have your belief structure and the way you do things. When you step under their roof, you are under their authority. You don't have permission to come in with your policies and procedures and bulldoze anything.
Right.
You, in their space, submit to that authority.
And
When they
again,
come to your house,
yeah,
this is where it gets a little more awkward because they think they can do the same thing again, maybe, but usually not. Depends on who they are.
Paul specifically talks about this with the food sacrificed to idols. And
yeah,
he's
that's
causing
what.
this.
If they don't eat it. Be full. Be on a diet. Be fasting.
Yeah.
I mean, you
He's
don't
like, if
have
it's going
to.
to cause a stumbling block, just don't.
But,
do
I
it.
went vegan, and then let them make fun of you for that.
Yeah, really.
Did you hear I'm vegan now? Just do that for a while.
It's vegetarian
We
for a while.
we can extend that principle up one higher.
I'm sorry.
Who has ultimate authority?
And then they'll call you a
Ultimately, it's
critic.
God. And so, if He has all authority in heaven and on earth, which is the Great Commission, then our final ultimate duty is to Him and His ways.
Yeah, but there's a difference between being in relationship with somebody and coming in and taking your Bible and hitting them upside the head and saying, "This is
So-
my God, not you."
But I think a better approach, go find you a little cabin up in the hills of Montana and write a manifesto and sit up there and let your beard get really long and don't talk to another human being. Then your ways will be His ways in full.
The point
Except
is relationship.
not. Torah is about
Issues
relationship.
over relationship.
The
I think
point is relationship.
when it comes to honoring your parents, and they're like, well, you have to do this thing. You can honor them by respecting them and loving them, but when it comes to you have to partake in this or you're not honoring me. It's like, well,
Right.
honoring, the best way to honor your parents, I think, and I might be wrong, but is to listen to the Lord first, because if you're going to be in a place to sin, then you can't truly honor your parents, because the point of having parents is for them to lead you to Christ. And if you're sinning against Christ, then that's not really honoring them. And you can also just pray for them to change and to not force you to do these things. That can also be honoring too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but again, is it against Torah? Are they prostituting you? Are they giving you meat and blood, sacrifice to idols? What are they actually asking you to do that's against?
Before, there's a temple in Mexico that on my dad's side of the family, specifically on my dad's side, they go to this in the jungle. I don't know her name, but they were asking me to go with them on this spiritual retreat and stuff, and just you're to learn more about your culture, you're to learn more about where, just who you are. you know, and we'd really like you to come and do this, because I was giving her when I was little, like, you know, flowers or whatever, you know, it was that she wanted, or, you know, we would pray to her, and but now I'm like, no, like, early mediators with Messiah, and they're just kind of, so I kind of talked to them, I was like, oh, like, you know, like, this is kind of what I believe, and they kind of, like, mock me, and they're like, you know, like, that's all, like, you know, I don't know, it's, yeah.
I think of Nate and Joseph, who we are praying for, who are ministering to Mormons. And Nate put in that one, you know, thing, the one text message that talked about the girl who was very interested in leaving Mormonism, but she'd have to leave her family.
Oh.
And the fact that serving the Messiah would cost her everything. Now, does she go middle fingers in the air to her parents and say, I'm no longer going to be Mormon, you know, screw you? That means, like, with a screwdriver, yeah, you put the screw in, it leaves a giant hole. No, she doesn't. But if she truly is going to follow the Messiah, she would say, you know, I'm no longer going to be Mormon, I'm going to give it up. That leaves it up to her parents to still want to be in relationship with her. But she has to do it 100% honoring. Does that mean she can't go to temple? Absolutely. Does that mean that she can't go to her parents for Sunday dinner? No.
Yeah,
And so there's a difference that is made in the fact that, yes, it should have to cost you something. It cost the Messiah everything, including his life. That was that whole set. It's in the blood.
Right.
So you are maturing and learning how to be in relationship that you will continuously have to do for the rest of your life. This isn't a one and done, but this is I will choose to honor my parents and love them no matter what, and it doesn't mean hit them over the head with the Bible
Or stand in judgment over them.
or this is how I think that you view me, therefore I need to come back at you with this.
Right.
It's honor and respect, and speaking in the Spirit tells you to speak. Otherwise, keep your mouth shut. Let your actions show, not the words that you say, this is what I believe.
Yeah, just to,
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think I have a slightly different perspective on this, and I think a lot of times you do have to cut contact, even with parents or family members, if it has been shown that they'll continuously try to drag you into sin, or that they will continuously try to separate you from God and are acting as like a tool of the enemy. Like, you can be praying for them, you can always be open if they want to come back to Christ, but sometimes you just have to be like, I can't be around you, I can't have my children or my family be around you, because you're going to just try to drag us back in. You're going to try to just drag us into sin. And sometimes you do have to say, like, even though this is someone who I should be honoring or I should love, that, like, the most honorable thing in this time is that we have to cut contact, or we have to not.
I think the only problem with that is that you're so young, don't have many years to view what damage that does, as opposed to being able to be strong in your own faith.
The damage that staying too long can do.
True. And so talk about abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse. I could agree with that. But there's also a way of
Going about it.
separating yourself without saying, hey, you know what, Sean, I'm separating myself from you. You're dragging me into sin, therefore I'm not going to have a relationship with you. As opposed to conversations that are less, phone calls that are less, diverting the conversation to other things, you don't have to be a victim, but also you need to grow your faith and not draw a line in the sand that could ruin relationship. If that makes sense.
Well, I think that's why the burden on us is so heavy, because we're the ones that have to learn how to operate in these fronts. How, if we're playing a long game, how does this actually look? Because I cannot on any level assume that the other people are going to change. That's not an assumption you can work off of. So if I'm going to operate from there, hoping they will, but maybe they won't, then how do I not drop a grenade in the midst of a relationship? Because do it long enough, what's going to end up happening, you'll have like the extreme case where you're like, okay, this is highly justified. Then you'll have the slightly less extreme case where you're like, okay, this one's still pretty justified. Then you're going to walk yourself down because that line is going to slide back to where you're like, well, I'm just, let's say, oh, we've been going to church together for 2 years, and then I just found out you have this religious belief. I'm gone. Okay, family, pack it up. We're all out.
We disagree.
We disagree. We're leaving. This is what you see long term. Families, they'll attend a church, and then all of a sudden, oh, we're in disagreement. We're out. And you're like,
Right.
what in the world just happened there?
Over and over.
And so church splits just over and over and over again. People going off, and then all the backbiting and everything that ends up growing out of that. And you're thinking, really? Over that issue? You know,
Right.
that's what you're dying on that one? That's weird. But it's because that line can slide if you're not careful. So figuring out how do I stay in relationship? Because here's the other part too. We'll hold different people who do the same things in different levels of judgment. So you could probably have a coworker that is probably 10 times more evil than your family member that you're cutting ties with.
Right.
And yet you're still going to go to the bar after work and have a drink with them because, well, we're all going
Or
out
the
together.
restaurant. You don't have to call it a
Or
bar.
the bar. We're all going to go to dinner. Oh. Well, no, at this level, you're ultimately going to be at the bar. But, you know, it's like, oh, well, I can learn how to be civil to my coworker that is a devil worshiper.
Right.
Right? You can learn how to do that
Yeah.
because money is very important to you. Well, I'm not going to quit my job. I don't care that much. Right? My standard isn't really that strong.
Right.
So,
It's kind of weird because some of my family's into Hinduism, and there's that, and there's like different sectors, and they're all like. Before I used to like go to them for advice or even spiritual advice, and now it's just like I can't really. I used to, and I'm just kind of like. And Granny's not doing so good, you know, she's going through her own stuff and stuff, and I was just like, oh, I'm not gonna bother her with that, and I've been writing, and I just feel kind of like keeping it all in, kind of, you know, and
yeah.
yeah, yeah, I don't know, it's kind
Yeah.
of weird.
I think having Torah as your standard
Okay.
and loving like Yeshua loved. I'm just gagging with the glasses.
Down her throat. I'm not having standards.
So, yeah, I think that's where it can get messy when it's something that I want to make money. I don't mind dealing with these people in my work environment
Yeah.
who are far worse than the people who are maybe part of my family or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then holding those different levels of standard.
And having time and years and experience, you kind of need that under your belt before
Yeah. Yeah, so play the safety. Assume that you don't know anything.
Okay.
And kind of operate from that position for a little while until you get enough data points to start seeing how decisions have consequence. Because you don't really have a long enough time frame to see how a decision here 5 years later has this consequence. You just don't have a large enough sample. And and this is where you the people when they finally get into like their 30s, they're like, oh, now we're starting to see some of these. Now they start to get it, and then you get in your 40s, you're like, oh, everybody's doing this. You see it everywhere. Then you get into your 50s. Then you start looking around and you're like, what? And then you get into your 80s like Clarence, and he's like, you people are about as stupid as anything I think I've ever seen in my whole life.
That's when Sharon starts preaching.
But it is. You end up reaching that point to where you're like, you start seeing it over and over again. You're like, why would you do that? I promise, don't do that.
Yeah.
But you know what? Cut ties with your drug dealer.
Right.
I think that's like what Sam was saying.
It's called your pharmacist, right?
Like
These
Sam
days.
was saying, you submit to God because God is the highest authority. But then you also realize that there are other places you still have to submit to keep relationship. You know, you can't, like Christy's saying, just walk into somebody's house and they worship some other god and they have a Buddha up, and you just like take that and smash it. Like, you don't have the authority in that
My mom has
space.
a big one in her room. She's just like, oh, come join me, and I'm just like, no.
So you can navigate these things like.
But the way that it's put, it's like, oh, well, you're not, honoring me, like you're supposed to support me and stuff, and it's just kind of like, well, that's not what I.
Yeah, and so you just have to
it's
learn, like
uncomfortable.
Billy's saying, to navigate each of these situations to where you can come up with you can still love people and not approve of their actions.
Yeah, and there's no silver bullet. You have to treat every situation as its own situation. So you here's what you do. On Monday, if you work someplace, take a trip into your boss's office, sit down and look around, and then all those things you disapprove of that are against your standard, I want you to stand up and throw them against the wall.
Okay, no, you're not. Sorry, I had to say that. She's my cleaner at storehouse.
But tell me what is going to happen in that situation. Are they going to repent of their actions and be like, you know what?
You're
lowly worker that I'm paying to do a job? I tell you what, you're exactly right. I'm going to turn over my life now because of your bold, brave move.
It does in the Christian movies.
But you're going to get fired. And then word's going to spread as to what type of person you are, and you're not going to get hired anywhere else.
Yeah.
Now you got to go back to school and find a different degree. And go fool some other group somewhere.
Then start throwing stuff there.
But don't cut them off because you'll regret it and you'll miss your family.
I'm trying to work on having a relationship, but it's like I'm confused, I guess, on how to do that. Like,
I just say, okay, Dad. Thanks.
Sure. You're also in that like weird in-between stage of like now you're an adult, but you're also in their house, and it's very strange and weird.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, I'm kind of an adult now, I want to do my own thing, but also I live in your house and kind of have to do your thing. And it's very strange in general. So it's probably just magnifying these things because you're already in that weird in between, and then now you're having to navigate the differences in beliefs. So I think it's part of growing up.
One thing I did, and it maybe not anybody else did it, I don't know, but whenever I would be in a situation like that with my family or with a friend or something, I would be like, Lord, show me the truth here, but protect me. Help me to keep my mouth shut when I need to keep it shut. Help me to say whatever it is that I'm supposed to say, when I'm supposed to say it, but only your words. If I need to not do that, then I just shut up. I don't say anything. But the whole time I'm in that situation, I'm praying, Lord, protect me, protect them. Because they don't know what's going on. They don't know all the stuff that they're into. But I have to be able to protect myself, and I'm trying to honor them as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if that,
No, I completely get that.
I don't know. Maybe that's not what Billy was saying, but.
I think I understand.
All right, so we got about 10 or 15 minutes. We want to talk about this Torah portion really quick. Now, ironically, we've been talking about it the whole time.
Yeah.
Oh, praise God.
Very in line with it.
This is where we are. So, I think everybody knows the story. Joseph and kind of getting a little bit full of himself, talking about some things, being his dad's favorite. Gets thrown, sold, trouble, thrown again, in the pit, and then inserted we get Judah. But and this one closes with, Mr. Cupbearer, please remember me when you go back out to Pharaoh. You got it, Joseph. And that's where we're at.
Freeze frame.
That's a very interesting point, because it goes, something that I've discovered is never forget who did you good. And this is pretty much the lesson why. Because after this cupbearer is never remembered. We never even get his name. But Joseph does remember. Joseph does remember the names of those who did him good.
Do you remember the name of those that did you good, sir?
Yes, my father in particular. He has been a huge blessing to me. My mother as well, who taught me much.
So yes is a...
Yeah. There's a guy who taught me how to do a pricing strategy, and I'm thinking, I need to go help this guy whenever.
What about the person who let you go in front of you at the grocery store?
Ooh.
Or what about the person that you didn't even know, then you left your car door open and they went and shut it for you?
Or the person that holds the door at the grocery store.
Yeah.
That's a very good point.
Or
Father,
unless
thank
you're
you
in
for
the
that.
lane.
Yeah, but we like to measure increase for ourselves as to whether somebody did good. Again, that line that we talked about earlier. So if I can measure somehow, if I can quantify somebody's goodness, then I can determine whether they were good. And that can get you in a lot of trouble as well. And on the opposite side,
Sometimes people calling you
just the
out and
same.
saying, yo, you need to repent because you're in major sin right now.
Yeah.
That is blessing because they love you enough to actually be truthful and honest with you, especially if they're willing to come alongside you and help you walk more righteously, to follow after the Messiah as the body was intended. That's also a huge blessing.
Yeah, but that requires us understanding what is life.
Yeah.
We
That's difficult.
don't understand, so therefore we get offended when that happens. Anytime there's an opportunity for us to grow spiritually, and when our ears are closed and our eyes are closed to what he's trying to say, and other people kind of come in on the back end, and then there's a rejection that takes place. I've shut you off, now I'm going to shut them off, and I'm going to live in my bubble of protection in death. Because again, we object to life.
It's fair. I'm also guilty of that. I'm usually offended for a day or two, and then the Lord's like, all right, are you done being a baby? Yeah, okay. But it does take that time to actually step back and see, like, is what they said actually true? Oh, yeah, it is. I probably should pay attention to this.
Yeah, and well, even if it's not delivered from a position of love,
Yeah.
if they're like, you know what, you're being a prick, because they actually despise you right then, they're probably not wrong. So sure, be offended,
Yeah.
but then they're probably not lying. Just saying.
But I think David is the good example. Like, who is this guy? I will kill him right now. David's like, you buddy, and he's like, oh, that's really unfortunate that I said all these things. Because lest you do the Israel thing, right? Jacob, whoever stole these things will die. Well, whoops, it's your beloved wife, and guess what's going to happen?
I think that's another reason why it's important to not uphold like a single standard that you're going to die on, because you've probably not met your own standard. Like, if I'm going to hold my family to, like, if they say a bad word in front of her, I'm not talking to them. Well, she already knew about screw you.
Screwdriver. Screwdriver is in French.
Yeah. So, like, we're not going to hold ourselves to that. So it's a lot to tell somebody who hasn't even gotten as far as you have in your walk, or hasn't gotten into their walk yet, that they have to have a standard.
And setting your standards,
Right.
right? You're then just
pressing your standards upon other people, which they're your
Judgments.
standards. They belong to us. They don't belong to somebody else.
But it belongs to us right now.
Until they
So
Until it doesn't suit us anymore.
until it doesn't suit it. But even still, you know, being like, well, here's where I am in my walk, therefore everybody else should be at my level. Hopefully not, because that means you're at the pinnacle. Because not only are you trying to pull these people up, but you're also dragging people back down.
Right.
So realizing that everybody's kind of in their own space and extending that grace and, yeah, I don't really like you as a human being. I don't think you're all that fantastic. But you know what? You're probably a work in progress. In 10 years, we'll probably be best friends. But right now, we're not. But I don't need to hold them in judgment as a result.
But not
Because
cutting
I don't want
off-
to, I wouldn't have wanted to been judged 10 years ago.
Right.
And it's the not cutting off the contact because you're not sure when or where or how Abba is working through you to actually impact the people around you. You know, if you are living and upholding God's standard or trying to the best of your ability, like submitting to His authority and being kind to people and, you know, helping those around you, those things really stand out to people, and it may not be by word where you're ministering, but just the very fact that your presence, that you're operating in the Spirit of God, even if it's fractional, that does have effect over time to people, where He's able to start working on their hearts to where maybe one day you have one conversation that just changes everything. I think to my cousin Joshua, who's like a brother to me, and you know, he very much was not a believer, and we still were very close.
Right.
And we had some conversation about Kanye West, who was like, "I'm a believer now,"
Right,
and he's
right.
like, "Well, that guy's a false prophet." I'm like, you don't even believe. What do you mean he's a false prophet? And so
Right.
we just get into this conversation that
Uh-huh.
Abba uses later to bring him back in. He's like, actually, I believe in God again. I've been going to church and all these things. Without that contact of, say, 15 years of just being like, hey, I still love you, don't necessarily agree with some of your life decisions,
Right.
kind of thing, you don't have the opportunity, like Billy's saying, in 10 years to say, wow, this person has actually found salvation. And then you get to rejoice with them of,
Yeah.
you know, being one of their friends for years and years and years. And you can really miss out on that opportunity to be that light to people. So
Well, that's if the standard for me was you need to be fully Torah observant in order to be accepted by me, to be my friend, to be whatever, Dry wouldn't be sitting right there right now. How long?
Yep.
A long period of time. Well,
like
ish.
3 years.
Yeah.
And I only really started looking into Torah because I'm like, I'm gonna prove this guy is an idiot. And I got into it, I'm like, this mirror is not very flattering.
But if my standard of, well, he's not actually a real believer, he's deceived by the church and therefore I can't be part of him, I wouldn't have a friend sitting here today. I would have destroyed a relationship and I would have walked contrary to exactly what Torah is designed to do, which is to bridge and build relationships. But understanding there's a long game being played. And not everybody is, even secular people, staying in relationship just because you don't know where things are going to land. You don't know in 3 years whether they're going to have a tragedy in their life to where they're going to start asking questions. You just don't know. And if you cut them off way back when, or you stay kind of in that side then it can create opportunity.
She'd bunk her head.
Brother has like asked me a lot of questions. He's 20. He's like 3 years older than me and stuff. And he was like, "Oh, what's Passover? What's this?" And he's like the only one that's really been reaching out to me and asking me that of everybody. And I'm just like, I was like wondering. I was like, I'm just very young and I'm still learning myself. Like, how can I? And she was just like, just do it little by little, or you know, like. But
Yeah.
like, because I'm so young, I'm just kind of like, well, I don't know, you know. Yeah.
It'll come.
Twice this morning already.
It'll
Make
come.
a little.
She's got an opinion. She's
I
trying to
think
share
we
it.
actually see the
Tell
long
us
game.
what she thinks. She's like, oh.
The long game being played this Parsha, right, with Potiphar not killing Joseph, which he could have. If his wife was to be believed that Joseph was trying to sleep with her, he, as such a high up official, he could have had him executed.
Yeah.
But he doesn't, and what happens? Joseph interprets the dream of Pharaoh, and it saves not only the nation of Egypt, but also his own family who comes back later, thus making his dreams come true. Like all these things of, if Potiphar was like, well, I need to save face, even though he doesn't necessarily believe that Joseph would have done this, he's like, now I'm being humiliated if I allow him necessarily to live. So he just sends him to prison. But he could have easily wiped him off the face of the earth, and then all of a sudden, all this blessing that came forth, not just for Potiphar, but for his entire people group, gets lost. Because you don't see that kind of keeping of relationship, so to speak. Because he's the captain of the guard, right?
Yeah, right.
Which supposedly would mean that he's pretty high up in the officials to handle prison stuff, so.
But
There's a
we also have to keep in mind that we're looking at a period in his life of about 13 years or so.
Yeah, in 2 chapters.
You were 5 13 years ago. All the stuff that's happened between, so we read these stories and we're like, oh, okay, cupbearer, whatever, 2 more years, all right. And then, but look, he rose to prominence and fame. Like, 2 more years
In prison.
in prison. We gloss over because we can, well, we know the punchline, so we can minimize those things. This is a large chunk of his life, half of his life, almost, spent either in a pit,
Or in slavery.
in Potiphar's house, a little bit in slavery, or in prison.
I think there's a parallel with the story of Tamar here as well. She is also playing that long game. She's very shrewd about how she does it, and where Judah is about to go commit some pretty heinous sin, God is providential and says, no, we're going to use that and create a lot of good out of it. High level summary. I can't get into the details because little ears around, but
I think it's funny that he's with the cult, he's looking for the cult prostitute, and then they're like, your daughter-in-law is pregnant, burn her at the stake. Like, come on, dude, seriously?
Again,
Like,
the
clear-
standard.
Like, clearly, he's
Persevere
not
standards.
following Abba's ways, because he's married a Canaanite wife and is now following after those gods, supposedly. But then when it comes to his daughter-in-law being pregnant, he's like, oh, she's committed this adultery and this sin, so now we have to burn her. Okay, dude.
Yeah.
And then through his line is still the Messiah. Like, how much does that speak to Allah's grace and love for us to see, like, Judah not walking very well, selling his brother into slavery and death and all these things, but then the redemption that can come through Joseph later, and just the way that, you know, it leads directly into King David, and then that's when God was like, because of you, David, I will establish the kingdom through your line as a gift, basically, like to bless his faithfulness. And I don't know, it's just really humbling to see, like, that long game being played out, because we get to see the whole picture, but it's just kind of wild.
Yeah.
I think it also changed Judah in a lot of ways because, you know, he had all those years of regret that he lived through. Later he repented to Joseph for what he did. You know, so it was that time of maturity for him to be able to learn to walk and to regret what he did.
When he's seeing his father, right, it says his father was, like, completely destroyed.
Right.
And to see his father fall apart for years on end, 13 plus years of like, oh, my actions have had pretty severe consequences for my family. And now my father is like completely falling apart for years, and he kind of moves away and does his own thing for a while. Why did he move away? maybe it is the guilt and the shame of
Yeah.
what he did. Because why would he leave his father when his father is so highly regarded and esteemed? Why would he leave and go find a Canaanite wife?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Is that like pride, like ego, like pride and all that? I don't know. I'm just kind of doing like.
I think when you put something in play that brings death, and nobody is none the wiser that you spun it up, the guilt and the shame that's built into that is destructive for who you are. I mean, it's to sit like Dry saying, look, come into the house and see your dad completely destroyed, sitting at the table because of his lost son, and you had a hand in it. How do you reconcile that?
In a way, it's bringing death into the family.
It is, but I mean, just that, it seems like a good idea. Oh, well, in my emotions, I'm going to do this thing, whatever. And then you see the fruit of that decision every single day. And you can't say anything about it. Because, I mean, it's not just you. If it were him, he could maybe be like, you know what, Dad, it was me. I need to get this off my chest. He had the pressure of his family.
He's like, oh, hey, Dad, it was me. I goaded all my brothers into doing it. Now we're all guilty. All 10 of your sons basically were okay with this.
Yeah.
Because Reuben tore his clothes. He's like, I'll let them get their little huffy puffy anger out,
Yeah.
and it'll be okay, and I'll come back and save them later, and we'll repent and move on from it. I'll just allow this little bit of, he kind of had it coming. He's a pretty pompous little jerk, walking around with his ego that's probably like, I'm the best. You're all gonna bow down to me.
Yeah.
And so maybe Reuben allows a little of that to slide so that it doesn't escalate. But in his absence, maybe he left on purpose or something. We don't really know.
Yeah.
That absence allows death to come. So the oldest has now shirked his responsibility of making sure the house is kind of in order for his father as the firstborn son. And then he's tearing his clothes like, what is this you have done? And his father does the same thing. His father's like, nope, I'm just going to mourn until I die. Thanks, y'all. And then you see Judah living somewhere else. It's like...
Yep. Grass is greener someplace else. And then next thing you know,
You're there.
your wife dies, your 2 sons die, you have 1 left at home, then you get baited by daughter-in-law into, which, how did she know dressing up like a prostitute was going to work on him?
Fair point.
Because he didn't act well in the first place.
He might have had a reputation, I don't know.
Canaanite wife, y'all.
And how you didn't recognize her? That's the other one. Another question.
Wasn't she covered and stuff like that?
She
Probably
was
veiled.
covered, yeah.
Yeah.
Did they have good makeup back then? Or?
I think she was covered. She was covering. Yeah, she was covering.
And she had the Instagram baddie stuff. She had like the winged liner. The red stuff.
God.
She put the dog filter on real quick.
Oh my God.
Any closing remarks before we wrap it up?
I just wanted to talk about the names of Tamar's sons.
Sure.
Because Perez is the father. It goes all the way down to David, which I think is really, really interesting. Sam and I talked a little bit about I have to do some more research into this, but just the way that like the younger usurps the older brother in a lot of ways. Here you see the Zerah's hand comes out and they tie a scarlet thread around him like, you're the firstborn. But then Perez comes out at first during birth, and that's why they call Perez, because it's like breaking the gap, like bridging the gap essentially. And then Zerah is this picture of like light. And I was looking into the names, and Zerah is only mentioned one other time. I believe, let me pull it up real quick. The Zerach, the rising of light, which is It's used 21 times, but the root word is only used once, and it's Isaiah 60, verse 3, which is, nations will come to your light, kings to the brilliance of your rising, talking about the glory of Adonai has risen upon us. And I just thought that was really fascinating, where you have one son literally is the lineage of the Messiah, and the other one is named from this root word that is the rising of the light that will shine upon you. And I just thought that was really impactful to see, like, from these two sons, just from their names and their lineage, you actually see the gap being bridged, being opened, so that life can come forth and this light shining upon us. That's kind of blew my mind up.
Yeah, that's good.
That's pretty cool.
I know I was whispering this to you before we started. I found a chiastic structure with this story, with the birth of the sons of Tamar and the birth of Jacob, and it centers right about on that wrestling with God. Two parallel stories. This is right in the middle, which suggests to me that that is a foundational idea for the rest of not only the book of Genesis, but probably how God is supposed to God relates to his people.
Yeah, the people of Israel, that's where his identity has changed. So that makes a lot of sense. Often look at that.
And it would also make sense because all the patriarchs follow this pattern, and their whole story is how do we wrestle with God.
Yeah, because Jacob and Esau.
Ishmael and Isaac. And now the sons of Jacob and even their sons.
And then you have Manasseh and Ephraim who are also swapped. Where the younger is anointed as the older. I don't know what it means, but that's fascinating.
Yeah. Call it.
Sure. You want to pray?
Mine.
Abba, thank you for your Shabbat. Thank you for meeting us today in worship. You're so good to us, Father. Just thank you very much for the way you've spoken to us. Please seal the things that need to be sealed, the truth that needs to be planted, that I might have harvest, Lord, and anything that is not of you may be burned up, that we might not fall into errancy, any of our doctrine or beliefs or anything, Lord, that we just continue to seek your face and stay repentant, that we would not sit in judgment over our family members or over other people that we interact with, thereby holding them in their own sin. Please help us just to emulate the Messiah more and more each day, that we would learn what it means to be your children, what it means to be your bride, that we wouldn't take those things lightly, Lord, because like Chrissy said, it cost your son everything, and you are asking us to give up everything to come after you, because you are so worth it. Please help us just to continue to seek your face for the rest of Shabbat, Lord, today, that it wouldn't just be now, but that you would be on the forefront of our mind as we go into this next week. Please give us the opportunity to minister to people by action or by word, that we might actually emulate the Messiah in our own lives and have the opportunity for that. So please open our eyes and our ears, that we might hear your approach and see these situations in which life needs to go forth, that we might be able to be a part of that, that your kingdom might come on earth as it is in heaven. In Yeshua's name.